They say an empty chair in the kitchen symbolizes loneliness. To me, it's more like a stubborn witness, sitting there day after day watching the circus of my family unfold. I'm 56, my name is Marcus Hale, and I'm a forensic accountant. That's the kind of person who digs through other people's financial records to find fraud. Sounds impressive, but really it's no different than being a traffic cop for numbers. For 30 years, I've seen every trick in the book, from CEOs hiding bad debt in shadow accounts to rookie accountants who accidentally typed the wrong number and made a few million disappear as if it were a wrong phone digit. Turns out the biggest fraud wasn't buried in corporate ledgers at all. It was sitting right there in my kitchen. That empty chair used to belong to Lila, my wife of 28 years. Now mornings are just me and a cup of cold coffee. I keep pouring out of habit. To outsiders, it looks romantic, like I'm still pouring one for her wherever she is. But to me, it feels like a science experiment to see if a chair can blush in shame for the person who abandoned it. So far, no. It just sits there, wood shining like it's laughing at me. It all started with a text message. I didn't snoop through her phone, and no one tipped me off. Simple as this, we still shared an old iCloud account from when our daughter was in high school. Lila never bothered to change the password, thinking I was always buried in spreadsheets. True, I was, but a forensic accountant lives on curiosity. Curiosity is in the blood, so when my laptop pinged with a notification, new photo uploaded, I clicked it, pure reflex. The photo looked ordinary, a dimly lit bar, a table cluttered with cocktail glasses. If I were anyone else, I'd shrug and think, she's out with a friend. But I'm no amateur. I right-clicked, checked the file info. And there it was, the truth rolling out like a marble falling off a table. Metadata, 10:32 p.m., Lakeview Inn Hotel, room 203. The text attached was worse. Tonight, room 203, bring the red wine. From Tyler Brooks, my son-in-law, my daughter Ava's husband. If life were a dark comedy, the director just slapped an R rating on it in one beat. I stared at room 203 and laughed. Not the happy kind. The kind of laugh an old man lets out watching a clown stumble on stage. Bitter and mocking. That kind of stupidity really thought it could fool me. I didn't shout. I didn't slam the table. I didn't storm into the hotel like some TV drama. I just pulled out my old ledger, flipped went to a blank page, and wrote one line. Ledger entry, loyalty audit. For me, everything in life can be logged. Income, expense, loss. Now betrayal. I sat there, coffee still steaming, the empty chair staring me down. I smiled, shook my head, tapped my pen against the page. A forensic accountant doesn't jump at the scene. We collect, cross-check, and wait. Fraudsters always leave a trace. And believe me, cheaters are worse than accountants who fudge numbers. They rely too much on the stupidity of the person sitting across from them. Some of you are probably shouting at me by now. Marcus, why didn't you smash the chair? Why didn't you drag her into the living room and confront her in front of your daughter? I get it. The instinct is to explode. But remember, I've built a life out of sitting still and letting people expose themselves. When you've spent decades sniffing out lies in a misplaced comma on an Excel sheet, you learn that rushing in only destroys the evidence. So I sat in the chair. I looked at it as if it were the judge in a trial. You see, I whispered. She showed her hand. Now we wait. The chair didn't answer, of course, but the creak it made sounded like a sarcastic nod. They say marriage is about growing old together. I say marriage is a balance sheet. Some years profit, some years loss. But if your partner starts hiding bad debts, sooner or later, the cracks in the report cracks. I've nailed companies for less than an extra comma, and Lila thinks she'll get away with a whole text saying room 203. I should invoice her for a crash course in concealment. I didn't rush to tell Ava. My daughter is an art teacher. Her heart's softer than butter left in the sun. This could crush her. And Tyler, my golden boy son-in-law, the one who shook my hand at the wedding and called me Did, with all the fake sincerity of a salesman. He looked me straight in the eye that day, like he meant he'd protect my daughter for life. Who knew that sparkle was just lighting the path to my wife's bed? Maybe you're shaking your head right now. Maybe you've smelled betrayal in your own home. And if you've ever stared at a chair that knows more than the person who used to sit in it, then you understand it isn't loneliness. It's a reminder, you're not crazy. You're right. I want to ask, where are you hearing this story from? A recliner in Texas with a glass of whiskey at your side, a kitchen in Boston where your chair creaks the same way mine does, or a cafe in California, staring out the window, remembering who once betrayed you. Leave a comment. I want to know how far the echo of my empty chair in Seattle can travel, because I'm not telling this story just to complain. I'm telling it so you see silence, when used right, is not weakness. It's a weapon. It's a game the other side doesn't even know they're playing. And trust me, when the game begins, the loser will never be me. The empty chair keeps staring. I tap my pen one more time and close the ledger. A forensic accountant never rushes. I will collect. I will line up the evidence. And when the moment comes, all I'll have to do is open the folder and speak 3 sentences. The rest, they'll collapse on their own. If the empty chair in my kitchen was the silent witness, then my ledger was the strict judge. And let me tell you, this judge never sleeps. After that room 203 message, I widened my investigation. I didn't need a detective in a fedora parked outside a motel. I only needed my usual weapons, a blue ink pen, an Excel sheet, and a brain trained to sniff out numbers that reek worse than spoiled fish. First came the credit card statements. Lila still used the supplementary card I had given her back when wives treated a secondary card as a wedding gift. The law forgot to note the fine print. Dependency stretches all the way to morals. I sat at the table, sipping coffee, scrolling through charges. And as always, the numbers began to tell their story. One evening last month, Wellness Retreat Center, $650. That same night, Tyler swiped his card at an Italian restaurant nearby, Truffle and Wine, $280. I used to think yoga kept people young. Turns out, it just gave them faster legs to sprint to the nearest hotel. If you see your wife's statement show a soul-healing retreat and fine dining in the same neighborhood, understand that the soul isn't healed with meditation. It's healed by someone's hand holding a wine glass. I printed the receipt. At the bottom, a signature for check-in. Sloppy, crooked lines I recognized at once. Not Lila's, Tyler's. I had once taught him how to sign neatly the day he and Ava bought their first condo. Now he used that same style to sign for hotel rooms with his mother-in-law. I almost wanted to call and congratulate him on his career progress, from real estate agent to homewrecker. I clipped the receipts into a folder and named it Ledger, Suspicious Entries. Short and simple. A forensic accountant knows that big cases always start with small numbers. Then came the spa bills, couples massage for 2, private sauna suite for partners. They say spa treatments relax people. To me, it was more like a math problem. One middle-aged woman plus one 32-year-old man booked for a Friday night, solved for how they relaxed. To be sure, I called Eric Shaw, an old colleague. Eric had been an IT forensics expert at the audit firm where I once worked. He retired early after his wife left him for her trainer. Since then, he'd become a master at digging up data. I barely explained before he burst out laughing. Marcus, you're telling me your wife and son-in-law are playing cat and mouse and forgot metadata is more loyal than a human heart? Exactly, I said, and I need you to prove it. The more obvious, the better. Eric showed up with his old laptop, fired up GPS log extraction software. With a few keystrokes, he pulled location data from Lila's phone. A map appeared with red dots moving. Last Thursday at 10 p.m., she wasn't at her Pilates class as she claimed. She was at Lakeview Inn. At the same time, Tyler's phone pinged at the cell tower next door. 2 red dots colliding on one map. Eric smirked. You don't need Sherlock Holmes, Marcus. Just pay your 4G bill on time. GPS does the rest. We dug further, hotel security footage courtesy of one of Eric's old contacts. The grainy image caught a reflection in the glass doors, a blonde woman with her hair tied up, a broad-shouldered man with his arm around her waist. Blurry, but enough. Even Lila's purse reflected in the glass, big as half the screen. I dropped the image into a new desktop folder. I didn't name it Betrayal or Evidence, like some TV drama. I called it Evensong. That was the piece of music Lila used to play every evening, claiming it made her feel at peace. Now, every time I opened that folder, I heard bitterness instead of harmony. Inside Evensong, I lined everything up. Card statements, spa receipts, GPS logs, Glassdoor photos, and the Room 203 text. A forensic accountant never lets data scatter. We live by the habit of packaging and filing. Each document was like a blade, sharp, silent, waiting. I'm telling you all this, and I still can't believe how calm I was. I didn't storm in to confront her. I didn't demand she confess like some soap opera. I just added a new column to my Excel sheet, miscellaneous expense, trust. And in the value cell, I typed negative infinity. Another morning, Lila said she had to teach an extra Pilates class. I nodded, no questions asked. But her card swiped at a downtown steakhouse, and Tyler's parking fee showed up at the same time nearby. I wanted to tell her, if you're going to cheat, at least pick a cheaper meal. Don't leave breadcrumbs on the ledger. But I stayed quiet, just printed the receipt and filed it in Evensong. Eric asked, "Want me to set up a hidden camera?" I shook my head. Not necessary. Digital evidence is enough. I don't need a Netflix documentary. I just need a neat folder for the lawyer when the time comes. We clinked beers in my garage like two old men finishing a chess match. Eric chuckled. I thought my life was tragic when my wife left me. But after hearing your story, I feel lucky. At least mine didn't sleep with my son-in-law. I laughed too, but it was bitter, like lemon rind. Yeah, every family gets its own script. Hollywood hasn't dared write mine yet. Day by day, the Evensong folder grew. Each file slipped in like another tightening loop of rope. I didn't rush. A forensic accountant knows fraudsters expose themselves when they think no one is watching. And Lila, along with Tyler, was writing their downfall line by line, bill by bill. Sometimes when I opened Evensong, I'd hear that old tune in my head. Lila once said, "This song makes me feel loved." Now it sounded like the tolling bell for a marriage's funeral. How ironic a hymn of peace became the soundtrack of the loudest betrayal of my life. See, life never runs out of evidence. People just prefer not to look. I don't have that privilege. My job taught me every number must balance. And when they don't search for excuses, search for fraud. I glanced at the empty chair in the kitchen and smiled faintly. It said nothing, but I knew what it meant. Let them perform. You keep collecting. I've sat in every kind of boardroom in this life. The family business boardroom where shareholders hurled financial reports at each other like kids throwing snowballs. The courtroom boardroom where lawyers shouted, judges banged gavels, and defendants pretended to be deaf. And the mediation boardroom where everyone tried to look civilized while secretly preparing to bite each other's throats out. But none of them ever felt like such a cheap play as the meeting between my lawyer Lila and me. The room was polished, bright wood table, orchids in the center. I sat on one side, Lila on the other. To a stranger, she might have looked pitiful. Shoulders slumped, eyes red, hands twisting a tissue. Add a violin soundtrack and you'd have a movie scene. But I knew Lila. I'd seen her fake stomach aches to get out of cleaning Christmas dinner, seen her fake forget my mother's birthday to dodge buying a gift. She was never good at acting, just good enough for anyone who wanted to believe. Beside her, Tyler, my son-in-law, sat slightly back, as if he were only there for moral support. The way he lurked made me want to laugh. He looked exactly like a junior staffer sneaking into a board meeting. No official chair yet, just hovering near the door. I wanted to ask him, "Did you bring your employee badge so I can log your overtime?" Lila's lawyer was a slick-haired man with a red tie and a voice sweet as artificial sugar. He opened his folder, then looked at me with sympathy in his eyes. "Mr. Hale, we're here to find a fair solution. Lila only wishes for things to end smoothly, no disputes." I nodded solemnly, faking emotion. Fair, of course. The prettiest words right after discount. He didn't laugh. People like him don't laugh unless the billable hours are attached. He slid the folder toward me. I opened it, and just as expected, there it was. The old downtown condo, a small lump of cash labeled compensation and alimony, just enough to buy a Starbucks latte every morning if I use reward points. The rest, the lake house, the investment accounts, the land in Montana, all to Lila. I glanced at her. She lifted her chin, eyes sparkling like she just hit the lottery. I could almost hear the curtains she was already picking out for the lake house. Tyler smirked faintly behind her, the smug grin of a man who thought he'd just won big. I wanted to write in my ledger, income entry, stupid grin. I pretended to study each page, furrowing my brow, shaking my head as if in pain. In reality, only one thought beat steadily in my mind. This is the perfect moment to bait the trap. Because what Lila never understood or pretended not to was that the lake house was never marital property. It had been placed in a family trust by my mother long before our marriage. I'd mentioned it at family gatherings more than once, but Lila was too busy thinking about her nail polish color to listen. She always believed community property meant everything was hers. But a trust is different. A trust has teeth, and it bites. I placed the file down, sighed, and looked straight into her lawyer's eyes. "This is what you call fair?" He nodded, even sweeter. "Considering Lila's contribution throughout the marriage, this is the most balanced agreement. You will still have your condo, savings, and a reasonable cash portion." I turned to Lila. She gave a tiny nod, eyes still pretending sorrow, but her lips twitched in a smile she could barely contain. If you've ever watched a child hide candy in their pocket, trembling with glee, you know the look. I nodded slowly. "Good, I agree." The room froze for a beat. I heard Tyler swallow. The lawyer blinked, startled I'd given in so easily. Lila closed her eyes, maybe to keep the fake tears of joy from spilling over. "Are you sure?" the lawyer asked. "I'm sure," I said, pulling out my blue ink pen. The same one I'd used to sign every important paper in my life. My first contract. The deed to our home. My daughter's birth certificate. I turned to the last page. Signed, each stroke steady and deliberate. I listened to the scratch of ink against paper, a private melody only I and the empty chair in my kitchen would understand. When I set the pen down, I smiled. Not the smile of defeat, not bitterness either. Just the smile of a man who had bought a front row ticket to a play and knew the ending would not be what the cast imagined. Her lawyer gathered the papers, face glowing like he'd just landed a fat retainer. "Excellent. I'll prepare to file this with the court." "Do that," I said calmly, as if I'd just agreed to order a side salad. Lila turned to Tyler, eyes shining, clutching his hand under the table. I saw it, of course. A forensic accountant notices small details, like hands trembling from excitement. Tyler gave a tiny nod, as if to say, "We won." And me, I slipped the pen back into my pocket, sat tall, glanced at my watch, and thought, the game has just begun. And you two have stepped right into the trap. The meeting ended. I walked down the hall, my footsteps steady. In the elevator, I caught my reflection. A middle-aged man with graying hair, eyes no longer heavy with sadness, but lit with calculation. Some might think I just lost, but a forensic accountant knows the ledger isn't closed until every entry balances. When the doors opened, I drew a long breath. The scent of polished wood and fresh paper still lingered. I murmured to myself, a condo, a bit of cash, and a lake house she'll never touch. That is the real balance sheet. If there is one thing I know for certain after 30 years as a forensic accountant, it is this: money always leaves footprints. It can wear a mask, it can dress up in ballet shoes to fool you, but eventually it will drag mud across the floor. And my wife, along with my dear son-in-law, were never smart enough to wipe those prints away. Eric Shaw called me that evening. "Marcus," he said, "I think I just found a circus trick worth adding to your ledger." I went to his garage, a place that smelled of old cigarettes and was stacked with recycled computers. On the screen, Eric pulled up an Excel file he proudly called his fish caught in the net. In the sheet, he cross-matched two lists: the buyers of condos sold by Tyler's firm and the new members of Lila's Pilates studio. I couldn't help but laugh. Turns out every condo buyer from Tyler received a voucher for Lila's yoga classes. Not 10% off, not 20, a full year free. You heard that right. A $500,000 condo came with a free year of bending and stretching. I wrote in my ledger, 1 year of yoga in exchange for $500,000 of real estate. You might call it business. I call it a circus. I still remember Eric's dry chuckle. A perfect combo. He sells the house, she does the stretching. The buyers think they're winning when in fact they're paying for the most expensive yoga classes in America. Not only that, I said, it's a financial conflict of interest. This pair isn't just cheating on my daughter. They've built a whole revenue pipeline under her nose. I sat down, took my blue pen, and sketched the flow. Tyler, clients, purchase contracts, Lila's studio. The money looped, but it left tracks. A forensic accountant doesn't need Sherlock Holmes. Just addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. The next day I called Renee Collins. Renee was a lawyer I'd met during a corporate trial 10 years ago. Back then, she was barely past 30, with curly short hair, eyes sharp as a scalpel. I still remember the opposing counsel smirking. "This little girl is your lead attorney?" 3 hours later, he was signing a settlement, sweat soaking his collar. That day, I learned never to underestimate Renee Collins. She picked up on the third ring. "Marcus Hale, it's been a long time. I have an interesting case for you," I said. "My wife and my son-in-law have been running a little joint venture that is dramatic." Renee let out a short laugh, not amused. "I know that tone, Marcus. This isn't a joke. Meet me tomorrow. Bring everything." The next day, I spread the Evensong folder and Eric's chart across her desk. Renee adjusted her glasses, eyes scanning quickly. Each time she turned a page, her pen tapped the table. Tap, 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 like a judge's gavel. When she reached the yoga vouchers, she snorted. "I've never seen anyone stupid enough to print it right into a brochure, buy a house, and get yoga." "They handed you the evidence," I smiled. "I don't need them to be smart. I only need them to be greedy." She closed the folder, looked straight at me. "What do you want from this, Marcus? Do you want the assets back? Do you want them in prison? Or do you want them splashed across the papers?" I sat tall, spinning the blue pen between my fingers. "I don't want a messy win. I want a clean one." She nodded. "Understood. Quiet, but thorough." "Exactly." Driving back through the Seattle rain, I watched the street lights ripple across my windshield. I thought about Ava, my daughter, still believing her husband was just busy at work, still thinking her mother was only obsessed with yoga. I thought about Lila's performance of weakness in front of the lawyers. And I thought about Tyler, my golden son-in-law turned clown, sitting behind her like an uninvited advisor. They believed I had signed away my defeat. They were already redecorating the lake house in their minds, new curtains, new rugs, maybe even a new bed. But they didn't know that every bill, every voucher, every email sat neatly filed inside Evensong. One day, when I open that folder before a judge, I won't need to shout. I won't need to rage. I'll need only 3 sentences. These are the numbers. These are the flows. This is the truth. The thought made me smile, not bitter, not broken. The smile of a man who knows his pieces are already in place, while his opponents are still dancing under the lights. My ledger gained a new entry, crossed interest, evidence ready to present. And beside it, I added one small note. Cleaner than yoga. There are family dinners that people think only need roast chicken, red wine, and a little garlic bread to feel warm. In my house that night, the menu came with something extra. Daggers made of words, seasoned with pretense and betrayal. And the chef, of course, was me. Ava, my only daughter, was the one who set it up. She had just transferred to a new arts high school, excited like a freshman on her first day. She called and said, "Dad, it's been too long since we had dinner together. I'll cook. Mom and Tyler can help. You just bring the wine." Sounds cozy, doesn't it? Picture a Brady Bunch scene, but set in rainy Seattle, except that 2 of the main cast had already signed contracts to play villains in real life. I agreed right away. A forensic accountant knows evidence sometimes needs the right stage. And what stage could be better than the family table, where silverware gleams and every word is sugar-coated? That night, Ava wore a floral apron, cheeks flushed from standing over the stove. "Dad, let me pour you a glass." She smiled, so innocent it hurt. Lila appeared in an ivory dress, her face painted just enough to look natural. The kind of natural that costs 30 minutes in the bathroom. Tyler followed, shirt collar undone, cologne so strong I nearly thought he had fallen into a vat of fabric softener. They sat. The golden roast chicken gleamed in the center. Ava looked around the table, happiness radiating, surely thinking, this is what a real family looks like. My chest ached watching her. She didn't know her family was already perched on the edge of a pit. The opening act was peaceful. A few stories from Ava about her students, a few nods from me. Lila served chicken and Tyler poured water. Then, as if on cue, Lila sighed, set her fork down, and spoke in a voice dripping with false concern. Marcus, I think it's time we consider selling the lake house. It's expensive to maintain, and far. With cash in hand, we would all be more comfortable. Tyler jumped in quickly, voice as sweet as corn syrup. I already have potential buyers, very interested. Market value is excellent right now, Mr. Hale. Golden opportunity. Ava's eyes lit up. Oh, selling would ease things for Mom, and Dad wouldn't have to drive so far to rest. All eyes turned to me, waiting. If this were Broadway, the spotlight would have dropped on the lead. I lifted the Pinot Noir, poured slowly into my glass, then theirs. No rush, no tremor. When the last glass was full, I tapped my knife against the rim. Clink! The sound cut through the air like scissors. Silence blanketed the table. I laid a thin envelope on the table, slid out several photos. Not family portraits, not landscapes, just blurred stills pulled from metadata and hotel security glass. The outline of a blonde woman and a man I knew too well, stepping through the hotel door. I said nothing. I pushed the stack to the center of the table, right beside the roast chicken. Lila froze, clutching her wine glass. Tyler swallowed, eyes darting like a student caught cheating. Ava stared at the pictures, then at her mother, then at her husband, her face wide with disbelief, trying to piece together shards that would never fit. I leaned back, lifted my glass, and smiled. Technology does have a way of ruining dinner. No one laughed. Dad, what is this? Ava whispered. Her voice trembled, begging for a rational explanation. But truth never dresses up. It cuts, raw and sharp. Lila blinked rapidly, fumbling for words. Marcus, this is a misunderstanding. It was just a planning meeting. Tyler was helping me organize a yoga retreat. At Lakeview Inn, room 203, I asked, my voice light as air. Her throat caught. Tyler rushed in. Dad, it's not what you think. Oh, I think it's fairly simple. I cut him off. These photos aren't mine. Metadata isn't mine either. But strange how it lists the hotel, the time stamp, and the exact location that matched your credit cards. I sipped my wine as if talking about the weather. Do you both realize forensic accountants make a living off this? The air turned heavy. Ava set her fork down with shaking hands, turned to Tyler, eyes brimming. He stammered, words collapsing in his mouth. Lila reached across to touch her daughter's hand, pretending to comfort. Ava, don't listen to your father. He's just tired, paranoid. I chuckled softly. If paranoia comes with full-color prints, maybe I should start a wedding photography business. At least my pictures never lie. Ava yanked her hand away, shot to her feet, her chair clattering back. She bolted upstairs, footsteps pounding. And so it was just the three of us. Me, the one who knew. Lila, the one pretending. Tyler, the one turned to stone. I gathered the photos back into the envelope with steady hands. Eat, I said calmly. The chicken is getting cold. Don't let evidence spoil a fine dinner. No one touched another bite. After dinner, I cleared the glasses and wiped the table as though nothing had happened. Upstairs, Ava's door slammed shut. In the kitchen, Tyler and Lila whispered frantically, voices low, edged with panic. I didn't interfere. I knew better than anyone. Cheaters always think they still have a chance to cover their tracks. My job is only to let them keep performing. Later, back in the kitchen with the familiar empty chair, I poured myself half a glass. I logged the entry in my ledger. Sunday dinner, table full of daggers. Outcome, silence wins again. I smiled. Technology might ruin dinner, but sometimes it makes the dessert taste better than ever. I used to think divorce mediations were meant to preserve some illusion of civility, at least for show. But that morning, walking into the mediator's office, I realized I was about to sit through the worst theater production of the year. The room was set up properly. Long wooden table, swivel chairs, coffee machine in the corner. At the center sat Mary Atwood, the mediator, like a kindergarten teacher ready to keep children from fighting over crayons. Lila sat to my left in a cream dress, hair carefully brushed, face arranged into weary but resilient. Across from us, her red tie lawyer stroked a folder as though it were a prized cat. And Tyler, you ask? He perched slightly behind, the special advisor no one invited. The only thing missing was a little nameplate reading, Intern of Betrayal. The mediator began. We're here to seek a fair solution, to avoid dragging this into court. Red tie lawyer was on his feet instantly, his voice dripping syrup. My client Lila Hale has suffered great strain in this marriage. She seeks only peace. We believe Mr. Hale at 56 is too old, too tired to manage such a complex estate. Allocating the majority of assets to Mrs. Hale ensures stability and long-term preservation of value. I nearly laughed out loud. 56 and already too old, too tired. Maybe they thought I should check into assisted living with a yoga package included. I said nothing. I leaned back, folded my arms, and turned to my right, where Renee Collins sat. Renee wore a gray suit, her eyes cold as a microscope lens. The moment red tie lawyer finished, she placed a small silver USB on the table. The click as it touched the wood was louder than any judge's gavel. We have some documents to share, Renee said evenly. The mediator nodded. She plugged in the USB. The projector lit up. First slide, a money flow chart. Red arrows linking Tyler's real estate firm to Lila's Pilates studio. Caption, free 1-year yoga membership with condo purchase. The mediator squinted. Next slide, an email draft. From Lila to Tyler. Subject, Lakeview plan. Content, after Marcus signs, we can transfer the title. Tell the clients to prepare. Don't forget tonight, room 203. The mediator cleared her throat, clearly wishing she hadn't had to read that number out loud. Next slide, GPS logs. 2 red dots, 1 Lila, 1 Tyler, converging at Lakeview Inn. Timestamp matched to the receipts already on file. The room was silent except for the projector's hum. Renee folded her hands, smiled faintly. This is only part of it. We call this folder Evensong. Sounds poetic. The contents are less so. The mediator turned to red tie lawyer. Do you have any explanation for this data? He stammered. We believe this information is outside the scope. No, the mediator cut him off, her tone sharp. If there is evidence of financial conflict of interest and possible fraud, I am required to suspend this mediation. The matter may go straight to court or to investigators. I didn't need to speak. I sat there, arms folded, eyes forward. It felt like watching a fake report being shredded in front of an entire board. The faker talks more. The faker looks worse. I glanced at Lila, her carefully staged look of calm sorrow cracked. Both hands gripped her tissue, lips trembling. Her glistening eyes were no longer rehearsal tears, but panic. Tyler was different. He kept his head down, staring at his shoes as if reading scripture. I almost wanted to joke, hoping those laces have a passport to get you out of here. The mediator closed her folder, her tone firm. This mediation is suspended. Until these materials are verified, I cannot proceed. The air weighed heavily. Lila turned to me, her eyes desperate. Marcus, can we speak privately? I only shrugged, lifted my water glass and took a sip. Technology really is inconvenient, isn't it? One tiny USB ruining such a grand plan. Renee collected the drum, slipped it into a velvet case, and locked it like a crown jewel. She rose, glanced at me. We're finished here. I'll be in touch once the next hearing is set. I nodded, rose, and walked slowly out. No need to look back. I already knew the picture behind me. Lila, trembling, Tyler staring at his shoes, red tie lawyer raking his hands through his hair, and me, the forensic accountant with the blue pen, adding one more line to the ledger. Mediation, when evidence speaks. Result, silence +1. I had sat through many court sessions in my life as a witness, as an expert, even as a bored spectator. But none were as sharp, swift, and bitter as the one that morning. The King County Family Court gleamed with polished wood desks, buzzing fluorescent lights, and a judge staring at the people before him like an elementary teacher watching kids argue over an eraser. Renee Collins sat beside me in a gray suit, her face sharp as a razor. Across from us sat Lila in a pale lavender dress, her face drained but clinging to the role of the wounded lady. In the gallery behind her, Tyler leaned in to whisper strategies to red tie lawyer, the scene resembling three people patching a sinking boat with chewing gum. The judge opened in a low voice. We are here to determine the division of assets between Mr. Marcus Hale and Mrs. Lila Hale. Counsel for the petitioner, proceed. Red tie lawyer sprang up, words flowing like cheap syrup. Your Honor, Mrs. Hale has devoted her youth, her sacrifices, and her strength to this marriage. It is only fair that she retain ownership of the lake house, the symbol of their family. At the word sacrifice, I almost choked laughing. Sacrifice. He must have missed the spa bills or the yoga vouchers traded for condo contracts. If that was a sacrifice, we should carve her a statue and crown her the saint of waste. The judge nodded vaguely and gestured to our side. Renee rose, her eyes glinting. She drew from her folder an old document, yellowed edges frayed. Your Honor, we submit Clause 14 of the Hale Family Trust, established in 1975. The room froze. Renee read each word with deliberate clarity. The lake house shall pass only to direct blood heirs of the Hale family. In cases of divorce, infidelity, or dispute, sole ownership remains with the bloodline. No person outside the Hale line shall inherit, purchase, or claim possession. The words rang off the wood-paneled walls. Lila's face cracked, lips turning white, eyes wide. Tyler bent closer, whispering frantic nonsense into her ear. But the door had slammed shut decades ago, the key buried with the family trust. The judge raised a brow. Response from the respondent. Red tie lawyer stammered. We have not had time to fully review this document. Perhaps a forensic check is needed. Renee's smile was thin. The document is notarized and archived at the county land office. There is nothing to check, only the truth to accept. The judge tapped his gavel once. Clear. The lake house remains outside Mrs. Hale's claim. We will proceed to divide the remaining assets per standard procedure. No more words needed. The strike had landed square. I rose. Every eye turned. I slipped off the wedding ring that had sat on my hand for 30 years and set it on the wood. The metallic ping echoed, not as memory, but as a verdict. I spoke 3 sentences, calm and final. I do not keep. I do not beg. I do not bargain. No raised voice, no trembling, just 3 clean periods. I turned and walked, letting the scrape of chairs and the rhythm of my steps write the last line. Behind me, Lila's breathing went ragged. Tyler's whispers scrambled, and red tie lawyer shuffled his papers in panic. I did not look back. They say the sweetest victory is the one that needs no explanation. Out in the hallway, light fell across my face. In my mind, the ledger added one more line. Trust clause. Clean win. And for the first time in months, my chest felt light. After the judge's final gavel, I expected chaos, shouting, appeals, threats. Instead, the silence was almost unbearable. When a farce ends, there is no applause, no boos, only the scrape of chairs and pale faces. The news traveled faster than I thought. Within a week, the real estate board suspended Tyler's license for 6 months, pending investigation of unethical practices. I read the notice and chuckled. They called it unethical. I called it sleeping in the wrong bed. The fallout was swift. He lost every pending deal, including a commercial complex he once bragged to Ava about, as if he had invented electricity. Lila fared no better. Her Pilates studio shut down within 2 months. Clients didn't leave only because of the voucher scandal, but because gossip spreads quicker than incense smoke. People go to yoga to find balance, not to watch the owner fake smiles while headlines scream infidelity. One morning, I drove past the studio. The sign was gone, a sheet of white paper taped to the glass. For lease. I didn't stop. I only thought, the downward dog can't save anyone from a moral collapse. Ava, she was the hardest piece to mend. In one blow, she lost both husband and mother. I remember the day she came to the lake house, face swollen from crying, hands trembling around a teacup. She asked me, Dad, which side am I supposed to choose? I looked at her, the same child I once taught to ride a bike, the same girl I held close during blackouts. And I saw in her eyes the pain of being dragged into a war she never chose. I placed the keys to the lake house in her palm. Cold metal, heavy with meaning. I spoke slowly. Each word weighed. You don't have to choose. This house is yours, not to sell, but to keep. It's the place you can return to whenever the world outside shatters. Iva broke down in tears and hugged me, and for the first time in months, I felt tears weren't a sign of loss, but of hope. As for me, I kept my own philosophy. Silent revenge isn't about striking with a sword, it's about building something better from the wreckage. The cash settlement, money Lila and Tyler once imagined I was holding on to for now, I handed to a local arts scholarship. I named it the Horizon Fund. No gold plaque, no press release, just a quiet line on paper for students of talent who lack means. I chose art, not finance, not real estate, because I remembered Ava painting watercolors on the porch of the lake house. I knew how many children needed a place where their colors wouldn't be swallowed by poverty. That was my final silent revenge. To turn the money they thought I surrendered into a value they could never touch. They chased self-interest. I planted something shared. And at 56, that contrast gave me the deepest satisfaction. One evening I returned to the lake house. The water rippled, sunset spread gold. Ava sat on the porch, brush in hand, her eyes bright again. She sketched lavender strokes on paper, the same wildflowers growing at the shore. She looked up, smiled, and I understood. Family doesn't die, it reshapes. Some cut themselves out through betrayal, others bind tighter through truth. I sat on the old wooden chair, opened the ledger in my mind, and wrote one final line. Fallout, wreckage, but also empty ground where something new can grow. And this time I closed the book with a smile, not bitter, but at peace. I've sat at more tables than I can count in my life. Boardroom tables where bosses thought they were Napoleon reborn, slamming files hard enough to rattle the coffee cups. Mediation tables where lawyers drew endless circles, like they were competing in a high school debate. Dinner tables where knives and forks cut more than chicken, slicing through trust. But the only table I ever felt at peace with was the old wooden one on the porch of the lake house. Its edges were worn, stained with coffee rings from the 90s, always creaking when I stacked papers on it. That table knew me better than any person ever did. On it today, there was only me, a stack of papers left to sign, and the green fountain pen that had followed me through half a lifetime. The nib worn down, the barrel scratched from 100 drops on office floors, but still steady, still loyal. I swapped the ink cartridge, the soft click sounding like a chapter closing. Wind came off the lake, lifting the pages, edges tapping against the wood in a quiet rhythm. Ripples caught the pale orange of dusk. No fireworks, no audience, just silence. And sometimes silence is the loudest sound. People remember thunder, but it is the steady rain that softens the earth. I signed each page, stroke steady, the hand of someone no longer restless. No thought of who won or who lost. No urge to flip the table, grab a mic, or stage some melodramatic scene. The ledger is finally balanced. Assets, memories, grief, all in their rightful columns. And when the pen left the paper, I smiled, not with joy, but with certainty. I had nothing left to prove. I whispered to myself, I don't need proof. I don't need to shout. I don't need applause. The truth is loud enough. That simple sound, mixed with the waves, felt like an evensong, a closing hymn no one claps for, but everyone hears. Someone asked me after court, Marcus, don't you feel regret? 30 years of marriage, and all you're left with is paperwork and a set of keys. I laughed. Regret for what? People can smash the vase, but they can't take away the hands that know how to fit the pieces back together. And sometimes the new vase is more beautiful than the old, held by patience and experience. Looking back, my marriage was no different than a financial statement. Some years showed surplus, some showed heavy losses. The issue was never the numbers, it was the fraud. And once a report is tainted, no amount of pretty figures can restore its value. Lila and Tyler thought they could claim ownership through deceit. But deceit, like cheap yoga, only stretches so far. The string snaps and everything collapses. They burn the bridge themselves. Now they stand on the far side, staring across with no way back. I never had to build a wall. They tore it down for me. Strange maybe, but convenient. Saves on cement. Ava still sits on the porch painting. Watching her, I realize family isn't the people sitting at the same table. It's the ones who stay when every other chair is empty. She paints with watercolors, the strokes bleeding into one another, a reminder that cracks don't vanish. They can become the backdrop for something new. The empty chair in my kitchen still sits there. It once witnessed every cheap performance, every hidden glance, every counterfeit smile. But now it isn't the witness to betrayal anymore. It's a seat waiting for anyone who brings truth. Maybe one day Ava will bring home a partner who deserves it. And if not, that's fine. Sometimes an empty chair is safer than a traitor in the wrong seat. I set the pen down and looked out at the lake. Night was falling, the air heavy with damp pine, a scent from my boyhood camping trips. I raised my cup of coffee, sipped, and thought, this is the kind of revenge that lingers. Silent, patient, unforgettable. Not because I shamed them in front of a crowd. I didn't need to. They shamed themselves the moment the truth surfaced. All I did was hold up a mirror, and in that mirror, they saw what they were. Trust me, that kind of reflection lasts longer than any spotlight. I shrugged, added one last note of sarcasm. If you enjoy this kind of silent revenge, the kind that burns slow and deep, hit subscribe. I still have folders I haven't opened. And believe me, some people are already busy burning their own bridges. All you need to do is sit here with me, coffee in hand, and laugh quietly. I pictured the audience scattered across the states. Florida in blazing sun, Ohio under snow, an old woman in Arizona streaming YouTube while her bread bakes. I knew they'd hear echoes of themselves. Because betrayal wears many faces, but silent revenge always looks the same. Calm, clean, and it lingers. The ledger closed. Waves rippled steadily. And I let the evensong play out, the closing hymn of a day, of a chapter. No choir, no drums, just truth. And truth always sings. I leaned back in the old chair, listening to its familiar creak. Inside, the lights glowed warm. Outside, darkness settled. And me, Marcus Hale, forensic accountant, once cast as the fool in someone else's cheap play, now sat as the one writing the final line. Not with rage, not with violence, but with green ink, a ledger, and patience. And if anyone asked for my secret, I'd answer simply, don't rush revenge, let truth do its work. Sit with your coffee and smile.